Welcome, one and all, to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 215. I am your one and only host for this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, bringing you the last podcast of April 2023. And as I'm sure a lot of you can already tell, I am a bit sick at the moment. It's mainly just a sore throat. I was feeling much worse a couple of days ago. It's honestly been all over the place in terms of how I've felt. It's gone from headache to stomachache to back pain to cold to whatever the hell this is right now. But I'm going to try my best to keep my voice as consistent as possible for this episode. So I do apologize if I do sound a bit awful for the most part, but I'm going to try not to let my voice fail me for the next half an hour or so. But besides being ill, it's been a pretty interesting last couple of 2 weeks in terms of media, in terms of me. I finally did beat Resident Evil 4, the remake, and I really did enjoy it. I still think, having played the game a couple more times now, that the original did do a few things better, but overall I do like this remake. Yeah, overall, I do enjoy a lot of the changes, quality of life improvements, and just overall, overhaul that they've really implemented to this game, as well as the fact that they've included mercenaries now, I think about 2 weeks after the game came out, which does bring me to, one of the bigger problems with this game, and I think a talking point that a lot of people have been discussing as of recently, as when the mercenaries, DLC, which was free, did come out, it did come with more microtransaction DLC. So for example, you can now pay to immediately get certain gun upgrades, and I think even just skip bosses if my sources are correct, which rubbed people the wrong way big time. And it's obviously got a lot of people talking about like cut content and stuff, because a few things were cut from the remake from the original game, which I don't mind, because the things that they have cut from the original game, I'm sorry to say, they're not really needed in this remake. Yeah, a whole boss got cut from the remake, and that boss that did get cut was trash in my opinion. But yeah, it is an interesting talking point for the most part. I disagree with a lot of the people saying that because certain things have been cut from the game is now inferior, when in my opinion, the things that have been cut wouldn't have improved the game in any significant way. If anything, it would have made the game slightly more overblown, or really would have felt unnecessary, or just let's put it in for the sake of putting it in because nostalgia bait and all that. Whereas if they did that, this remake wouldn't have been able to stand on its own, as at least there's still a unique, take on the original game, because it's more of a reimagining than a remake for the most part. So it is a bit strange. The other thing I did manage to do before I got ill was I watched the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was good. Now, again, I think there was a bit of a disconnect between audiences and critics when it comes to this film. Critics seem to absolutely hate this film. They think it's the worst thing ever made. And when you look at a lot of their reviews, it just kind of comes from a very bitter, spiteful place of just, I'm annoyed that I have to review a film that I deem is for children, therefore I'm going to give it a bad review. Whereas everyone else who, has a brain has kind of just viewed the film as what it is and kind of enjoyed it. Yeah, the film has problems. It's not perfect. I will say I think the pacing is a complete mess. The story is very safe, and Chris Pratt's performance as Mario, it never grows on you. It never feels genuine or believable or strong, which is a massive disappointment, because he's like the main character, the one you're going to root for, the one you follow, and yeah, it just doesn't work ever, which is a massive shame. But besides that, the film is really good. The animation is on point. What they did with the characters in the world and the video games was very well done. Really good implementation and kind of usage of things from game to film, which I think they did a fantastic job with. But I would actually recommend this film. It's not going to blow you away necessarily, but it is worth a watch. It has caused some interesting shakeups within the world of media, and Hollywood more accurately, where because it's done so well, it being, I believe, the animated film with the biggest or best opening box office, which is quite significant and somewhat unsurprising, but at the same time, it's also Illumination who made this and animated this films. It's also their weakest performing film, interestingly enough. And I know the head of Illumination, he said that because the film has done well in the regards of it, doing well at the beginning of its life in the cinema, I guess you could say, that it just goes to show that animation, or the artistry of animation, is not as respected as it should be, which is a very sad fact when you consider that it took them to have to do an adaptation of another popular IP for them to get a sense of respect from audiences and other people. So yeah. And the other thing that is quite funny as well is that obviously because this film has done so well financially, Hollywood in of itself is kind of panicked because people besides children are watching an animated film, and according to their narrow-minded view, only children watch cartoons, which is not the case. We really need to break away from that stereotype, because it is a bit silly, especially when you consider the fact that some of the best films to be released and TV to be released within a year is usually animation, and it makes live action and other things look pretty stupid for the most part. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing for the most part. Let's move on to some trailers, and the first one is going to stay with animation. We're going to stay with it for a while, and that is going to be for the announcement trailer for Migration. Now, keeping with the hype train going off the fresh success with the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Illumination is already advertising for their next film, a film that doesn't come out until late December. In America, I believe it's the 22nd of December. I would imagine for us, it's probably not going to be until actually next year. But yeah, why are you once again promoting this film so early if you're not going to advertise it all year round? Like, just promote it, reveal it, whatever, closer to its release date. Like this is a really weird thing to do, because this trailer is more of a highlight reel for Illumination than a teaser for an original story. Like, there is roughly, and I counted, 45 seconds of animation from Migration. Like, it's barely a tease, and I know that they want to capitalize on the attention they have right now, and they want to promote like a new film that sadly may not perform well, because in its simplest form, it's a film about ducks. It's nothing special, once again, sadly, compared to the Super Mario Bros. Film. Obviously, I hope this is not the case, but releasing a trailer like this is worrying, as it suggests that they're not super confident in this film, and it proves my point that they should really promote it later to give it a fighting chance, rather than slapping together this trailer that doesn't really do anything for the film. But the film itself looks great, in my opinion. Like, I'm super excited for it because it's coming from director Benjamin Renner, I believe that's how you say his name, who did Ernest and Celestine back in 2012, as well as the Big Bad Fox and Other Tales. So I'm super excited for good things. I'm super excited for this film, and I'm expecting good things from him. Visually, it's really beautiful. Like, the natural lighting is fantastic, and I love the forest vista as we like follow them like taking off and flying and kind of coming out of the trees to kind of see that lovely landscape. I think that's really nice, and I do like the family dynamic, although it's not really verbally seen between the family for the most part. And I hope it stays as wholesome and kind of expands on things. Even just the scene of them huddling together under the bridge as it rains is like a really cute shot, and you do kind of see the very horrifying implication at the end with I believe it's a heron, kind of, I guess, stalking them or looking at them or whatever. I say horrifying because herons tend to eat ducklings. Yeah, so don't look that up because it's a terrible visual. But yeah, if that's going to be the case, that does add a sense of tension and, real life horror once again to the film. But I'm really looking forward to this film. I do like their overall cartoony yet realistically accurate generic looking designs. Like, they look like ducks, kind of just, but they don't have like over exaggerated eyes like Disney eyes, for example, which I think is really good for the most part. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this film. Shame we have to wait almost like 8 months for it now. But yeah, next trailer is a bit of an interesting one because it's for a TV series that doesn't exist right now. It's more of a proof of concept trailer, and that is going to be for Playground. Now, I can't remember the person's name who animated this, nor the person who composed the music, but that information will be in the description in the download link. But yeah, this is the stuff of nightmares, honestly. Like, it reminds me a lot of Cat Soup, and I do wonder if... Oh, actually, I did write down their name, but I can't quite pronounce it. I think it's Rodrigo Sousa. I've probably butchered their name, but once again, be in the description, the download link. I do wonder if they've taken inspiration from that film, as this concept does play with the idea of children's imagination creating like the worst monsters, or children themselves being able to see monsters, and adults not being able to help in any kind of sense for the most part. And I really do like that whole idea of like, is any of this real? Is it just their imagination, heightened imagination, if you will? As the monsters are creatively creepy, like they all resemble something normal, like an insect or a bug or a person or an old person with one of the examples. But now in like a twisted, awful way, like there's always something quite off or something that changes with this beast. It's not just a spider. It's a spider that has eyes on top of its head, or things, smaller spiders kind of launch off of it. It's a really interesting concept, and there's a nice contrast between the monsters moving creepily slowly towards the children and like scarily rushing towards them as if to like literally eat them. And the music itself, I think it's fantastic, even if it's just in a, less than 2-minute trailer. It's very panic inducing, which I love. And I would love to honestly see this kind of become a series if that is the intent. If it stays as a concept, I still think it's worth watching. But I wanted to link this here just to, get the word out, because if there's enough interest, maybe they will go on to do something, or maybe someone else will give them the funding or pick it up or whatever. So yeah, it's always good to promote things that are good when you see them, for the most part. Next trailer we have, staying with animation once again, got one more animation thing to talk about, and that is going to be for Star Wars Visions Volume 2. So yeah, finally, more of the best thing to happen to the Star Wars franchise since the Clone Wars in 2003, directed by Genndy Tartakovsky. And if you don't like my statement, you're part of the problem with Star Wars. So you're going to have to take that or leave it for the most part. But yeah, I still haven't watched the first season. I was actually going to watch it before recording this episode, but I got greatly ill and I really couldn't concentrate on watching a whole series or even just binge watching it for the most part. So I will try and watch it at least before the second season comes out, so I can kind of talk about both in comparison. But yeah, like, I am excited for this because this has nothing to do with Disney, and it's funny how we get a good piece of media to do with Disney when, or at least with Star Wars, when Disney is not involved at all. And I am loving the inclusion of more varied studios and animation styles with this second season. Because the first season, from what I saw, it was very much... Although you could like pick certain shorts out apart from each other, they all were, let's say, 3D animated, let's just say, to use a broad term for the most part. I'm sure that wasn't exactly the case. I'm sure some of them used 2D or 3D or, whatever, for the most part. But I mean, you have a short from Punk Robot, who are more catered to more younger children's projects for the most part. Like, they have an almost stop motion moving toys style, so it'll be really interesting to see them like make something more focused, possibly more adult, because even in the shots when you see them, you see like the more childlike character kind of saying like, oh, I'm gonna do this, as like a... I don't know what any of the things in Star Wars are called when a machine or whatever, a ship comes chasing towards them or whatever, in that kind of sense, which I think will be interesting. Aardman, the Kings of Claymation from the UK, are making a more comedic short, which I think is really interesting. They are very good with comedy. You can tell I'm sick when I can't even say proper words. They strive when it comes to more comedic styling shorts and projects. So I think to kind of see a more funny take on the Star Wars universe, I think would be really interesting if that's where they're going for. The implication seems to be that it may be more of a space race, so we might get a unabridged sequel to pod racing to some extent. I don't know. We haven't seen any kind of racing in the Star Wars universe for a while, so that could be really fun. And then we have Cartoon Saloon, who did The Secret of Kills, Wolf Walkers. What was the last one they did? My Father's Dragon, which came out last year. And yeah, them doing a Star Wars short is a match made in heaven, because they're always able to kind of make the smallest of stories very epic and very grand. So whoever decided to get them on board to do this deserves a pay raise, because yeah, that is top tier decision making at the fine people at Lucasfilms, I guess. But yeah, all of these shorts look visually impressive with their own original take on things. Like, I do like how one of the more like cell shaded ish 3D animation ones, the lightsabers, whenever they swing them, have like a sort of like painted effect, and there's one that has an almost like 3D realistic take on things, which I think is really cool visually. So I'm actually excited to see, hopefully this series kind of really expand, kind of take some risks and experiment on things, and maybe we'll get a third volume, I guess. I'd love to see more animation or animated no more animation, but more anime studios kind of take the reins and kind of do a series. Because I know Trigger did an animation last season. I would love to see someone like, was it Censura Science, who did Lure of the Wall and Devilman Crybaby and such, kind of do one. Maybe even the people who do Beastars, I would love to see like their sort of like motion capture, face recognition technology within the Star Wars universe. I think that'd be kind of cool. All the people who worked on what's it called, Chainsaw Man, I can't remember the studio who worked on that, kind of do something within that visual like cinematic epic style. I think that'd be really cool to see. But yeah, moving away from animation, we're going to go to superheroes briefly, and that is going to be for there was a few superhero trailers. One was better than the other, and this being that, and that is going to be for Blue Beetle. I was not aware that they were making a Blue Beetle film, and I'm moderately, still once again can't speak. I'm surprised to see how this film is turning out, as I know nothing about Blue Beetle, and I know he has a lot of fans, so if I get something wrong, I'm sorry. The most I know about him is that he's good friends with Booster Gold, who is a character I like. But yeah, Iron Man 4 is going in a very interesting direction, as it's clearly taking inspiration from Iron Man, more particularly the first film, which makes a lot of sense given the similarities between them, at least from what I can see, a guy in a suit for the most part becoming a superhero. And I do wonder if this film is meant to be like another reboot to the DC universe, since Iron Man started off as Marvel's start of their cinematic universe for the most part. And the suit transformation was horrifically awesome. I really did like the fact that it just started on his face, just like, I don't know, whatever it was doing, and it kind of launches him into the air, and his body's hanging off the ceiling, and his family's just screaming in just confusion. I think that worked well as a sort of, literal what the hell was going on kind of comedic moment. And like, it's a very small film, at least I get the impression. Like, it seems to just be revolving around this guy, his family, I guess this company, they have the Blue Beetle technology or whatever it is, and it does give it a more like personal feel, which is nice. It doesn't feel like a stupid blue laser beam is going to shoot into the sky and destroy the world. It just feels like the final conclusion is going to come down to him and just one other guy who's like, give me back the Blue Beetle, which I kind of do like. And the suit, in my opinion, is where I think I'm probably going to get a bit of flack. I don't think it looks great in this film. I think in other adaptations, like in the comic book, more accurately in cartoons, it looks a lot better. It looks a little too overly designed, a bit too busy in my opinion, but the hub display I think looks really good. The CGI, when it is a CGI suit, does look kind of ugly. It looks a bit too generic, which is a bit of a shame, because any superhero needs to stand out as much as they can, even if it's via the suit, by the story, by the cast, and it doesn't do it any favors for the most part. I think 15-year-old boys are absolutely going to love this film. It looks like it's absolutely catered for them. The only problem I have with this trailer is the line, Batman is a fascist. Like, that killed the film for me and a lot of other people, because it's just so unnecessary, and it just completely kills the tone of the trailer and what the film, I at least interpret, is going for the most part. Like, what is DC / these writers in recent years' obsession with, like, criticizing Batman with, like, these edgy, limp-wristed attempts at, like, comedic commentary? Like, I can kind of see, like, you're trying to go for an angle of, oh, well, Batman's a rich guy and they're a poor guy, so they wouldn't like Batman because he's rich. But that's very surface level, and it almost feels out of place when it comes down to the story taking place in a Spanish Mexican themed environment, area, state, whatever. I don't quite know where this is taking place. It's very tone deaf, very tone deaf, excuse me. And I thought the whole line of, like, from Robin from Titans breathlessly saying "fuck Batman" was bad enough, but they really need to stop doing this, because they're not saying anything. And if you are gonna do this, like, go full at it. Don't just have a haphazardly line of him just saying, "Oh, Batman's a fascist." Why is he a fascist? Oh, we're done with that scene. We just wanted it. We just wanted that line for the trailer. It's so shit at the end of the day. I really don't get it, and it's things like that which, yes, they put it there for people like me to get annoyed about and promote the film, but it doesn't do anything, and it doesn't paint you in the best of light. DC's already in a bad enough position as it is. I know recently the Justice League killed the Suicide Squad. No, I got that all wrong. The Suicide Squad killed the Justice League game, which got destroyed online. I know that got pushed back to February. So to be having lines like that in your film isn't going to do you any favors. So I would, if I were them, I would cut that line completely, put it on the DVD with bonus features or whatever, because it's really dumb. But yeah, last trailer we have, it's going to be another short one, because yeah, there wasn't a lot of trailers, and literally as I finished writing this podcast, a ton of things went up. So it was like, I'm not well enough to add more to this podcast, so I'm sorry. Maybe I'll talk about it on the next episode. But last trailer we have is going to be for Talk to Me, which is going to be another A24 produced film. So we know this, or published or released, whatever. This one's very promising. I really like this. It's a horror film, and like the first question I have about this trailer, because it seems to revolve around this girl or these kind of characters, teenagers, youngsters, if you will, kind of playing this game where you have to shake this hand and you have to say "talk to me," and I guess you speak to the dead or see the dead. Like, where did that hand even come from? Like, is this like something she made in like art class, like papier-mâché hand, or like I've heard of TikTok like challenges, but like this is a bit ridiculous. Like, what is going on? And I can kind of see this. Well, I think A24 films has a bit more class. They're not as desperate or as scummy to kind of turn their film into a, oh, do the talk to me dance where you have to shake a hand and do a spin, you know, I think Megan was basically like a TikTok horror film where like the whole selling point of that film was, can you do the Megan dance? You know, that kind of like cringy, awkward stuff. But, you know, it worked because that film did well, but still. I digress, I'm getting off track. But yeah, the youths themselves, they actually look and actually act believable. They're not annoying in this film. Like, it's not trying hard to kind of make them seem like hip and young. It kind of just, like, they've cast like genuine people, like genuine teenagers. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of like their aesthetical look for the most part, not like my fashion sense, but like at first I did think this film was going to be like a monkey's paw type story, but given the trailer and the context, it seems like it's going to be much worse for the most part, as it's actually refreshing to kind of have a character in a horror film actively cool with being able to see and contact the dead, because there are a lot of people, unfortunately, who would do anything to see lost ones they've loved, or to see lost loved ones, which is a scary truth that this film is kind of preying on, because there is a shot where she is, supposedly talking to her mother, but, I'll get onto that section in a minute. And I do like the allegory between, like, I guess, kind of communicating with dead, shaking his hand, or kind of, whatever is going on, the allegory to drug use, as they're both experiences that kind of take you to a different place, which I think is kind of like a clever and interesting take on things. And, to have the dead almost always obscured is such a creepily brilliant, like, detail. Like, given the film, it gives the film like a dream-like quality or nightmare aesthetic, which makes sense because now what is real at this point? Like, is she legitimately seeing this kind of stuff? Is it just like her delusions? Is it what she wants to see? Like, is it really her mother? Just that shot once again of like her just like saying, "Oh, hi, mom," and it's just like this clearly humanoid figure just sitting there, and you can kind of tell there isn't something quite right with it, and we don't know if that's what the blurred visual is what she is legitimately seeing, or it's what we can only see. It's interesting. It's thought-provoking in some matter, and it does also beg the question, do you want to know what that is? Like, because these, whatever they are, dead people, spirits, demons, whatever, they're clearly manipulative, a little bit of Evil Dead going on there, and it is interesting. And this is based on the whole idea, once again, of what you don't see is the scariest. And we don't really see what these things are. They're clearly humanoid. They clearly got some kind of motive or intent. And that's what's so frightening about it. You've welcomed these things in, and they're clearly here to stay. And that's kind of what I love about this trailer, is that there's a lot going on. It doesn't feel too complicated, but it feels very simple. Like, it's base core girl getting haunted by ghosts, demons, dead people. And that works. It reminds me a little bit of the original Eye film from Japan. So I'm really interested in this film. I hope it works out. I know the directors, they originally started out on YouTube making short horror films. So it's really cool to see them finally make their big film. And I wish them all the best with this film. Hopefully it does really well, and hopefully it is a good film. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be the podcast for the most part. We do have the video of the episode, which is going to be Best Croissant in Paris. This is coming from YouTuber Luis. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember his name. But yeah, just a simple review video of a guy in Paris going to some of the more famous croissant shops, trying the croissants and reviewing them. Nothing strange about this video, nothing out of the ordinary, just a simple video about a guy eating croissants. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy that video, and hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you've made it to the end, I really appreciate it. I want to thank you for obviously listening and hopefully enjoying this episode and putting up with the awful state of my voice. I will hopefully be much better for the end of the podcast. In terms of podcasts, so next month, the next podcast will be in May. And as we've tried to do for the last few years, we're going to try and make it, or have 2 anime episodes where we talk about anime or have anime focused discussions or whatever. So hopefully that will happen if things work out, although quite a few of the people that usually appear in this podcast are quite busy, so we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for the most part. So I guess I will end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.